Another concept worthy of note is the past and future, and how regret and resentments and ideas about what's happening feed off of the idea that we're not in the present. And if the present is present and it's where all that's happening is happening, the only place we happen, the only place we occur, the only place we are as beings is in the present. And if we're in the present as beings and we have bodies, our bodies are always in the present. We're always in the moment. We're never not in the moment because we're thinking we're somewhere else. So to think we're somewhere else is again to put thinking as the senior primary source of our experience, rather than seeing that when we think we're not in the present, we're in the present thinking we're not in the present. And all of these attempts to steer thinking in a direction of crazy is what drives us crazy. Having considered thinking as our source, it has driven thinking to develop all sorts of ideas that are absolutely not true in the name of trying to confirm the basic lack of truth that we are not in the present. Most worry, if not all worry, is happening in the present about things that aren't happening. They're either in the past or in the future. All regret is held in the present, happening in the present, about something that isn't happening. So I would suggest, and all resentments are held in the present about something that's not happening, from a time that is no longer, or a time that has not yet come. And when the past was the past, when the past was happening, it was the present, and when the future happens, it will be the present too. So the continuity of that is consistent. We're always in the present. There is no past and there is no future. The present is a culmination of everything that's ever happened right now. Everything that is as it is right now is absolutely a combination of everything that's ever happened. So if you need to know anything about the past, it is with you now, in the present. It is here. It is with us. It is our experience on a human level. So to think about regrets and to think about resentments is to think that what isn't happening is regrettable. And to think about resenting somebody for something they're no longer doing doesn't make any sense. And to worry about something that isn't happening doesn't make any sense when you begin to consider how things actually are. So what are those things we're doing? If there are no secrets in the universe, and I would propose there are not, we think they're secrets because we haven't come to understand them. That does not make the universe secret. It means that everything that's happening is somewhat inexplicable to us. That again puts thinking in the role of saying that the universe is holding secrets back on us because we haven't achieved the ability to actually interact with it on levels where we understand it and can apply it. And typically all that means is apply it in some commercial way. We haven't decided how to figure out how to make money off of it, so we think it's a big secret and we're trying to uncover it. If we're trying to uncover secrets that aren't secrets, then our relationship to those things is that they're hiding when it's our hiding in our thought that's really causing the conflict that keeps us from developing things that are natural, that are healthy resources, like energy, I imagine, could be created in ways that solar energy is a good example. It's pretty low impact on the earth in terms of toxic waste and in terms of poison, in terms of contaminants. And there's probably other things that are so far beyond our imagination because we think things beyond our imagination don't exist and or are secrets, which they are not. There are no secrets in the universe. Everything's doing exactly what it's doing right now. So resentment and regret and worry, I'm going to make a suggestion. We don't resent another person. What we resent is that we're spending time thinking about what's wrong with them while we're ignoring what we're doing that's wrong, which is bothering to resent them. And we don't regret the past, and we don't fear the future. What we regret is that we know when we take the time in the present to spend time thinking about something that isn't happening, we're not paying attention to the present. We're developing an experience that becomes seemingly second nature, but it wouldn't be second to nature if nature was nature. It would be natural if it were natural. It isn't. We even refer to it as second nature. We develop a system of operating, a mode of operating, a modus operandi that acts as though how we think about space and how we think about time is in fact how space and time are, when it isn't. And so we resent our own action for thinking it's someone else's fault, something else's fault, something else to blame, than what we're actually doing in the present. We're aware of it. It's the same reason we worry. We worry because we're thinking about things that aren't happening, and if that didn't cause worry, we would be sick naturally. And the fact that we worry is a good indication that we should be worried. It's the same with fear. When we feel that inner fear that we create, we are admitting that we're doing something presently, now, not some other time, not some other place, that is worthy of noting fear. Our body reacts in fear and pain and struggle and strain to tell us something is wrong. It's not trying to prove that pain is real, which is how the ego determines pain is its lies being real because they cause pain. That's not a source of reality. That's a source of what's wrong. That's a source of telling us. Body tells us about things in pain to say something's wrong here. Pay attention over here. You've stubbed your toe. It may need some help. You're bleeding. You may want to put something on this. Your stomach hurts. There may be something wrong. It's not trying to say that the wrong in your stomach is reality, and as a result, the justification you have for continuing to drink or eat poison or bad food or whatever it is that's causing it is justified because now it's real and, oh, well, that's reality and I'm just going to continue doing exactly what I'm doing rather than read the pain as a sign that something's wrong, and what's wrong is what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is based on what I'm thinking. Whenever I'm doing anything voluntarily, it's based on a thought. And I choose those thoughts. Those thoughts I'm free to choose, and I can choose any one I want. When I choose wrong thoughts and think they're right, I create that head-on internal collision of a master-slave relationship where I've created the problem, and I feel that I'm subject to it as a slave. I'm condemned to it. And how do I try to escape it? Just like using drugs and alcohol, just like gambling or any distraction. I try to put it outside of me to make believe it's not happening, because if I was willing to admit I'm doing it, I'd start looking what I'm actually doing and stop it and say, oh, I don't need to continue doing that. But the addictive nature is to say what I'm doing isn't wrong, so I'm going to continue exactly what I'm doing, and I'm going to try to figure out what's wrong out there. It's never right to be wrong. But when I'm wrong and I admit I'm wrong, it's right. It starts adding up. When a lie is a lie, it's no longer a lie. A lie only maintains itself as a lie as long as I or my thoughts continue to make believe it's not a lie, it's true. And something like a lie that tries to be exactly the opposite and only claims to be what it is by being the opposite of what it is can't exist other than in thought, other than in imagination, other than in wrong thought thinking it's right. And how does that happen? My intent, my insistence that it persists to continue to justify the excuses I use to try to excuse me from the table, to try to excuse me from participating, to try to excuse me for all the things I've done wrong rather than concede it. It's really the essence of forgiveness and forgetfulness. Forgiving is letting things be as they are. I don't hold anyone in a form of resentment unless I'm trying to use them to justify and excuse what I'm doing. And when I start seeing that their ultimate nature and your ultimate nature is exactly as my ultimate nature is and all of our ultimate nature is, I have no resentment at all. And I'm not unforgiving because I haven't created a conflict between how things are and how they seem to be. What's interesting about forgiveness and forgetfulness is that when I'm unforgiving, meaning I'm holding something against someone, something, somewhere, somehow, I immediately forget it's me. Why? I can't stand to bear witness to continue to do that. And if I did stand to bear witness to see that I'm continuing to do that, I would stop immediately, because there would be absolutely no justification in it whatsoever and no excuse. So the maintenance of the lie continues to, that's the addiction. That's the sick part of it. This chronic nature of constantly feeding the source of the lie and making believe someday it will get better. And the sickness of it is, the more I do it, the more I know it's wrong, the more evidence piles up, the more stress piles up, the more anxiety piles up. And the sickness is thinking, you know what I need to do? A little harder, a little faster, a little more. I need to keep doing this. I just haven't gotten it right yet. Someday I will, and I'll just keep doing it, rather than saying, it's never going to be right. It's never been right. It's not going to be right. I can think it's as right as I want it to be, and it won't be. And it's such a silly little gesture that causes such an incredible sense of density and being cut off and being disconnected and feeling alone. Loneliness is simply feeling a thought that has no basis. And my willingness, my choice to continue to make believe that it's everything. Because the fear it creates compels me almost like a bully, as though it's something separate from what I'm doing. I use it to excuse what I'm doing. And if you think about the thoughts you have that you feel condemned by, you couldn't be condemned by them if you didn't think of them as doing something independent of you. I often hear people say, I'm attacked by my thoughts, I'm attacked by my brain, I'm attacked by my ego won't shut up, boom, 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 boom. All of those things are ways to give those forms a sense of life, a sense of reality they do not have, other than the thoughts we maintain about them. And why do I give them an independence? Because it seems to me I've put them outside of the self that's creating the problem, the thinking that's creating the problem, sufficiently to justify it ain't me. While in fact I'm dead center of the problem. Self-centeredness has me dead center of the creation of a self that has no center. It has no place. It has no space. It has no time. It doesn't exist except to thought. My natural state of being isn't a self. It's a shared, whatever it is, a shared absolute nature that everybody has, that can't be divided because it's indivisible. It can't be discriminate because it's indiscriminate. It can't be inequitable because it's equitable. It gives everybody everything it has all the time, and that would be a very good definition of love. So if love is the nature of our existence, and I grew up in a church remembering in gold leaf it said God is love, and that always was curious to me because I didn't find the people in that environment always that caring and loving. There was a lot of righteousness. It was very hard to make sense of when I was young, and it discounted the concept for a long time because I thought of those circumstances as indicative of what that meant, rather than starting to see that what that meant is exactly what it meant, and it didn't matter how people behaved or broke down around their own thinking. They too were included in that love, and they too were an expression of that love, and how they decided to think about it and act as a result of their thinking was up to them. And how I decided to interpret what they were doing in my thinking was what I was doing with thought, and thinking that thought was so dominant that it actually cast a shadow and created a block to that sense of love or that sense of God or whatever it is. Love and God have gotten a bad name in human history. When we say that we love our compulsions and we love our addictions too much to stop them, that isn't love, it's hate. It's a misuse of the word. And I would challenge you to start looking at your compulsions and see if they aren't things that you say, well, I just love doing it too much. We will use love in vain when it's actually hate and killing ourselves. We're killing our body. We're killing the body that houses the self we think we are, in the name of thinking we're getting better, because we're distracting ourselves from our experience. And in fact, at the same time, we absolutely know what we're doing, or we wouldn't hurt over it. We wouldn't suffer over it. We wouldn't feel less than. We wouldn't feel low self-esteem. We wouldn't feel suffering and pain. And being numb to pain does not mean no pain. Numbness is an indication of pain. It's actually an admission of pain. So to go frozen to something simply to keep it from hurting means it's hurting. We've just frozen ourselves to it. And the thaw of beginning to look at this tends to, my experience with many people, lead to tears, a melting, and emotions that have been held seemingly hostage for years, often decades, that are given the chance to be expressed and start to do what we're designed to do, which is to express them in all the numerous ways that we're able to: crying, laughing, joy, anger, all different ways that we're capable of. And those capabilities and possibilities do not end when we start thinking straight. You begin, I begin, we begin, as far as I can tell, to see that those possibilities always exist in every moment, because we've been given the freedom to do whatever we want. And if we can do what we want, and what we want at times is wrong because we think it's right, then we can as easily, if we can do it quickly, we can do it as quickly in the opposite direction by beginning to stop and beginning to have to utilize that freedom to acknowledge that it isn't something we're required to continue to do, except to the thinking that's sick, that's asking us to constantly feed it more and more and more and more of the same. But it's poison that we're feeding it, and it's always been dying, and we know it. We're desperately trying to resurrect it and resuscitate it by adding more toxic waste to it. As you see clearly some of these basic principles and consider them, you'll start to see that you'll have a shift in awareness, and it will not come from understanding. And if you understand it, there's a good chance you're misunderstanding it. There's a sense of knowing that you'll get. It's what we call in 12-step programs a spiritual awakening. It's awakening thought to the natural state of spirit that we've always had. Rather than making believe it's up to thought to get there, it's actually beginning to see that it's undoing, which is why we're asked to let go absolutely. It's undoing what we've been doing, rather than doing more of what we've been doing in a new way to think it's going to get better, when in fact the premise of it is sick. The new way is to see that the premise of everything has always been healthy and natural and absolute and whole and complete. And what we do in recovery is what we do on a daily basis. We either choose to open ourselves to what's happening, or we choose to refine what we've always done in the name of thinking we're saving ourselves. And the saving of a self that doesn't exist is a waste of time. And that's why being full of shit seems so normal or common. So we're not trying in this conversation to get our shit together. We're trying to recognize that to even consider getting our shit together is a pretty sick concept, when shit is effectively a waste where all the nutrients have been taken from it, and even the body knows to get rid of it, let it go. And the letting go of it is beginning to see we've never held on to it at all. All we've held on to is an idea that we held on to it, and the sick part of that is that we're holding on to it to prove that those ideas will someday be true. And so when we're called liars and full of shit, we react saying, no, we're not, only for one reason, because we're exactly that in our own thinking. We know what we're doing is wrong. We know what we're doing is bullshit, and we blame it on the bulls rather than recognize this is human shit we're talking about. It's a choice you're free to make. It's a choice you've been free to make the whole time. Your suffering is a condition of your own choices. If you are suffering some debilitating, unresolvable issue, that is not a choice. But the question is, are you better undermining your body now and weakening its metabolic system and its immune system and its psychosympathetic systems and all the systems that are designed to balance and bring health back to a body that's diseased? Are you better or worse by adding stress to it? Are you better or worse by entertaining thoughts that are toxic? And I would suggest to you that it's natural to do the natural thing, and it's unnatural to do the unnatural thing. The unnatural thing takes great effort, great commitment, and yet has no productive result whatsoever, and never will. And the natural thing takes no effort and no commitment, because it's simply beginning to allow all that is to be, and begin to see that that's absolutely all you've ever been. And by the way, all we've ever been and all we can be.